Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
From the Fifth Quarter Studio in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to the Coaching Youth Hoops Podcast.
They're playing basketball.
Here's our hosts, Steve Collins, and Bill Flitter.
Hello, coaches, and welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I am your host today, Coach Bill Flitter. And today we have a special guest, Mark Priscaro. He is been reffing for a decade, and we're going to talk about common misconceptions of the basketball rules, some things that are kind of misunderstood that coaches get wrong, that players get wrong, and especially fans, and maybe some of those little known rules that come up and sneak up on you as a coach once in a while. So hopefully you guys will sit back, tune in, and enjoy the conversation. But before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today. Our sponsor is basketballplaycreator.com. Head on over there if you need to create basketball plays. Pretty intuitive. You can create playbooks that you can share out with your entire team. They have full animations. It's absolutely a wonderful tool that I have used since it really launched, and absolutely love it. All right, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, off air, just not only is Mark a ref, but it was a longtime radio host in the Midwest, right?
Midwest and East Coast, also New Orleans area, greater New Orleans area as well.
So he's gonna have a great voice for the podcast. Gonna show me up. So teach me a few things, I hope. So tell us, Mark, a bit about your background. Maybe go into some details of where you're roughing now and your kind of roughing history.
Sure. Really got going, as you alluded to, about decade ago, well, over a decade ago now. My boys' Catholic Youth Organization, CYO, as it's known, Tri-Valley League. I hail from Pleasanton, so that's the geographic area of our CYO competition. And for those that aren't familiar with CYO, it's literally, as the acronym spells out, it's youth sports activities, and basketball is one of the big ones here in Northern California in the Bay Area. So I have twin boys, and they were both interested in playing basketball at the time, and that's going the way back machine to third, fourth grade. First couple of years, they had a wonderful coach. His name escapes me, but once they got up to the fifth grade level, a good friend of mine whose sons were going to school with my boys became head coach of the fifth grade team, and he was looking for an assistant coach. So I was available, dumb enough to join the coaching ranks. And that's basically how I got my start at the youth level with coaching before I got into officiating. So that continued through 8th grade. CYO wraps up once middle school concludes. And neither of my sons expressed an interest in continuing to play at the high school level. But I still had the basketball bug in me at that point. So I said to myself, okay, I'd never force either of my boys to pursue something that they're not interested in pursuing. But I wanted to stay involved, really enjoy the game. And I was like, how can I stay involved? And I looked into officiating. I had done officiating the last couple of years in an unofficial capacity, if you will, refereeing intra-squad and interleague scrimmages at the CYO level. And I found that I enjoyed it. And it's like, sure, why not? So I kind of like jumped into the officiating pool, looked into where I could, get into officiating in the Bay Area. And I was able to get picked up by an organization known as CCBOA, Contra Costa Basketball Officials Association, which is one of the major basketball officiating associations in the Bay Area, primarily in the East Bay, pretty much up and down the 680 corridor, if you will. We handle games for the East Bay Athletic League, Mission Valley Athletic League, which is primarily Alameda County. East Bay Athletic League includes schools here in Alameda County, also predominantly in Contra Costa County. We officiate as far northeast as Benicia, Brentwood, Antioch, Pittsburgh area, and as far northwest as Benicia, Martinez, and then all the points in between from up north there all the way down to Newark, southeastern Alameda County. And awesome. I was going to just say I joined that association in 2017, and I've been with them ever since.
How many games do you do a year?
Good question. It varies depending on your availability. I probably officiate on average 3 to 4 nights a week. Sundays are usually free. There's usually no high schools at the high school level that are playing basketball on a Sunday. Very rare. So about 3 or 4 nights a week, Monday through Saturday.
It's a good workout too.
I oftentimes tell people, why do you do it? And I say, well, number one, it's the best cardio workout you can do and get paid for.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's just dive right in. And I know, I've known Mark now, is it 2 years?
Yeah, at least 2 years.
Yeah. He got me for a violation, for a uniform violation, the first game he reffed for me. So I appreciate that. So stupid. That was my fault though. I don't know what I was thinking. Wrong number. Remember that?
Sure do. Yeah.
Mark definitely plays by the rules, and that's definitely appreciated. You can't argue the rule book with Mark, so that's awesome. What are some of the most misunderstood rules that you run into, during game day? So misunderstood by, let's start with the fans, because I think, you probably get a lot more heat from the fans when they don't truly understand the rules. Sure.
It kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes some gyms you have fans that are more vocal and more critical of the officiating as opposed to other fans. It's like Baskin Robbins, 31 different flavors of fans, coaches, players. One of the most common things that we hear frequently is player is fouled at the high school level. There's no such thing as continuation in high school. If I had $1 for every time I had to explain that to someone, even coaches and players, I would have a good chunk of change in my back pocket. So that's one of the key differentiators at the high school level. There's no continuation. And what happens frequently is fans being fans, we're all exposed to basketball at the college level, but especially at the professional level. So big time, right? The show in any sport. And certain things that you see that are allowable at the professional level, they're just simply not permitted at the high school level. So again, to answer your question, the continuation argument, or people wanting to know why a basket doesn't count in high school, and it's like, we see that on TV all the time. Why didn't you give them continuation? Because there's no continuation in high school. You just don't.
We see a lot of travels at the NBA level too that can't get away with at high school or grade school, right? They travel more than some third graders.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I've worked with a lot of college officials. A lot of college officials will come back to the high school level because they've had their fill, especially from a travel perspective. The distances between schools at the collegiate level is huge. So a lot of guys just get burned out, literally, and they'll drop back down to the high school level. And certainly at the professional level, you have to appreciate that you have the best basketball players in the world, literally, playing in the NBA. I mean, they are the best of the best. And so the speed of the game at the NBA level is just incredibly fast. Bottom line is, it's very easy to miss a travel at the NBA level. So it's not like they're deliberately letting travel violations go. It's just, it can be really tough because of, remember, the officials, all of us, no matter what level you're officiating at, we're in real time. And at the high school level, we have zero benefit of replay. Replay is still, there's zero replay at the high school level. Whatever we determine or correct ourselves about, if it's a correctable error, that's the call. College over the years has incorporated more and more replay into officiating, which obviously gives you the benefit of reviewing the play in slow motion. So you can see, oh, okay, he did do this or he didn't do that. And so then you can adjudicate correctly. Another differentiator, we don't get a lot of comments from fans or coaches about this, but the level of fouls, for example, in college and in the pros, you have flagrant ones and flagrant twos. That simply doesn't exist at the high school level. You have a flagrant foul. You can have a flagrant personal foul or a flagrant technical foul. In either of those situations, if that's the call against a player, an offending player, he or she is gone. They're immediately disqualified from the game.
Yeah.
There's no wiggle room.
Yeah, and are there other, like, the one I've heard through the years is over the back, right? Over the back, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. That we hear that frequently. In fact, last year I was doing a varsity league game, Mission Valley, Washington High School in Fremont at American, crosstown rivalry. And the longtime coach at Washington, Mike Tripp, great guy, very knowledgeable, knows his stuff. He was complaining that the player from American was over the back of his player, who was much shorter than this particular American high school player, who literally reached over the Washington player to grab a rebound, a defensive rebound. And he was yelling over the back. And I just looked at him and laughed. And the reason I laughed and chuckled, and so did my partner, Mike should know better because he's a veteran official. At no level is there a call called over the back. Or I should say there's no foul or violation known as over the back. What happens is it's perfectly legal for one player to physically reach over a shorter player and grab a rebound or a loose ball. That is not a violation. It's not a foul. However, if in the process that they're reaching over the back of that player, they displace that player, i.e. push them with their body, that is a foul. That's either a blocking foul or what's commonly adjudicated in that scenario is push, because literally they're pushing the player out of the way to get the ball. That's what we're looking for in that scenario. So that's a real good scenario to bring up, because that happens all the time. And
that happens a lot.
As long as the player who's in front of the player who's reaching over them, as long as he doesn't displace that player, make him move to gain an advantage, it's perfectly legal.
So how do you differentiate that, an aggressive box out by either player? Well, let's talk about the player in front of me is pushing on me. I'm behind them because he's trying to get the ball, right?
Yep.
So I'm pushing back, right?
Mm-hmm. That's another good one. That alludes to people that like to say that, well, basketball is not a contact sport. It's like, I guess you've never officiated before or been actually close to the action in a basketball game at any level. There's plenty of contact in any basketball game. So the scenario you described happens all the time. Again, what we're looking for is displacement. Is the contact from either player displacing either one of them? If there's displacement involved, that's a foul, because you're gaining an advantage by displacing that player, either whether you're on defense and aggressively trying to box that player out or prevent them from getting a low post opportunity, scoring opportunity, whatever the case may be, or you're just literally trying to get him out of the paint in anticipation of him or her receiving the pass. What we look for in those scenarios, what's classic is the forearm arm bar against the back. That, generally speaking, is allowable, especially if the other player is counteracting by basically pushing back, typically with their back. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
When it gets to the point, if the offensive player takes both arms and wraps themselves around that defender to basically prevent them from doing that, that's an offensive. That's a team control foul, because they don't have the ball, as opposed to player control. Player control is an offensive foul whenever it's assessed against the player who actually has possession of the basketball in the front court or the back court. In the front court. So that would be a team control foul, because that offensive player is gaining an advantage because they're literally holding the defensive player and restricting their movement when they do that. So that's a foul. On the defensive side, once the defender makes any kind of pushing motion, whether it be with that arm bar, if they're strong enough, and normally they're not, but sometimes there's a player that's strong enough, they can literally push that offensive player out and away from the basket. Well, that's a pushing foul. So that's a foul. If they get two hands on the back, we will usually, as long as one of those hands comes down, if it's not constant, if they're keeping constant contact with two hands, then that can be called as a hand check foul. Especially, and it was a point of emphasis last season, especially if that player gets possession of the ball. If the defender ends up with two hands on the back while the player has possession of the ball, that's a hand check. And I bring up points of emphasis, POEs. Every year, the umbrella organization for high school basketball, the National Federation of High School Associations, NFHS is the acronym. They come out with a list of POEs. And last year, that was a major POE. We want two hands on the back called, especially when it's a defender putting two hands on the back of a ball handler in that ball handler's front court. They want to try to eliminate that from play. So you get two hands on the back. If one of those hands drops off, like within a second or two, we'll typically let that go. However, like sometimes I've had this scenario where that defender will actually get one or two handfuls of a jersey and restricts the player literally from moving. Well, that goes beyond a common foul. At that point, that's an intentional foul. And intentional foul, that's a higher level. And what that results in is the offended team and the offended player gets 2 free throws and an inbound a throw in from the front court, sideline throw in after the 2 free throws. So that's a no-no. And I've grabbed that, pardon the pun, at least 2 or 3 times over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, you got to teach the kids how to do that without the ref seeing. It's not a foul unless the refs see it.
Yeah, I mean, some players will try and get away with that, and what that boils down to is making an attempt on the ball. If the foul isn't making an attempt to make a play on the ball, that's one of the litmus tests for upgrading, as we like to call it, upgrading a foul to an intentional foul rather than a common foul.
And I'm going to drop back here a little bit, and you talked about the arm bar. Now, for years, if I'm the offensive player in the low post, I'm sorry, the defensive player in the low post, the offensive player has the ball. Yes or no, can I use an arm bar on defense to keep him out?
You can, as long as you're not displacing them, as long as you're not gaining a physical advantage with that arm bar.
Okay. So I can't extend it, of course, but I can hold it.
I mean, you can extend it as long as you're not displacing the player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In other words, if you're just doing a back and forth based on the motion of that offensive player, in other words, if you extend that arm bar and the offensive player basically forces your arm back towards your chest as the defender, you got nothing. That's basically nothing. Neither player is getting an advantage there. The defender is just basically...
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
That's your money saying it's time for a McDonald's run. Because with new McValue at McDonald's, you get more than you expect. Like buy a 6-piece McNuggets and add a McChicken for just $1. Your money says let's go. Get more than you expect with new McValue. Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
The defender is just basically, is moving with the offensive player and vice versa. If the offensive player makes enough of a pushback to displace the defender, then you have a player control foul. So that could actually be adjudicated as a charge as long as that defender is maintaining legal guarding position. If on the other case, the defender is actually displacing the ball handler with that arm bar, actually pushes him forward when he didn't really want to go forward, then you have a push foul. Pushing foul or blocking foul against the defender.
Something very similar that always gets me, and I'm hopefully you, and I know I hear it on the other side too with coaches, is, okay, 2 players going to the basket. One has offense, defense. Offense is dribbling towards the basket. Okay. Defensive player's job is to stand between them and the basket so they don't score easily. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the defensive player is down, just your traditional slides, in front of them, hands to the heaven, chest out, and using their body or hips, right, to keep that player from scoring. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, from what I heard so far, what you're going to say, as long as I don't displace that person, then that's not a foul. So can you clarify that motion where, again, defense is hands to the heavens, they're showing their hands, right? And they're keeping the defender from just a straight line drive to the basket. Just keep it real simple to start.
Okay, yeah, that's a classic scenario. Right. In that scenario, what we're looking for from the defender is, did he or she establish legal guarding position? Okay. And legal guarding position means you can get in front of that offensive player, but you have to have both feet set. There can't be any movement. In other words, if you didn't stop your movement before that offensive player made contact with you, that's a block. That's a block 100% of the time. So in other words, you have to have both feet established in that space as the offensive player is approaching. Now, if you have legal guarding position established and the offensive player makes contact with you, that is a charge. That's a player control foul. That's a charge because you established legal guarding position and the offensive player is not allowed to collide with you, to displace you. Any kind of movement, once that defender establishes legal guarding position, because this happens too, more so at the upper levels than at the high school level, but it does happen at the high school level. Defender establishes legal guarding position. Offensive player is skilled enough to do a Euro step. And it's like, whoops. It's like, I thought he was going to over my left shoulder. Say he's driving on the left side, right? I thought he was going to go over my left shoulder as the defender, but he took a Euro step. And now he's switched positions with his second step. And he's moving to the left. He's going to get around me. So I'm going to basically lean into him with my hip.
Right. Yeah.
That's a blocking foul. There can't be any movement. You have to be stationary. That includes your hips. That includes your upper body and typically your shoulder or your elbow. Any movement by the defender to try to restrict the movement of the offensive player who's trying to drive to the basket, that's a block every time.
Let's dive into that a little bit more then. If I'm playing you one-on-one, okay, and we're at the wing position, okay,
like just beyond the arc, just beyond the 3
just beyond the arc, right?
Okay.
And I'm keeping you, and then all of a sudden you do a move and you get by me, and you get by me not completely, but I'm chest. Your shoulder is in the middle of my chest. Again, I'm in this position. Okay. Now, as the defender, I'm sliding with you as you're going towards the basket. And that's where I kind of was going with that question too. Are you saying that once the chest to your shoulder to my chest, and I'm keeping you from scoring, and we're going to the basket now?
Yes. So that is what you're describing is legal. That's the defender moving obliquely is the term with the offensive player. As long as you are not prohibiting their forward movement to the basket, you're still in legal guarding position. And we see that too. And a lot of times there'll be contact as the offensive player, excuse me, is proceeding to make a layup or maybe a pull-up jumper if they're not confident that they're going to get all the way to the basket without contact. If that defender has hands up in the air, and that's classic, and all their movement is moving backwards, like towards the end line, and there's maybe a minimal amount of contact at all, we got nothing there. We don't have a defensive blocking foul, a hit, as long as he hasn't hit his shooting hand, gained any kind of advantage whatsoever. If the defender is moving backward in that scenario and there's some contact, we have nothing there. We don't have an offensive foul. We don't have a defensive foul.
So I can't push back as the defender?
Pardon me?
I can't push back as the defender
to
keep them. So again, just to set it up on the court too, you're starting at the wing. Your line is to the block. So you're going from wing to block, right? And I come and I push you now off that line to, let's say, just outside of the block, a few inches, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, you just described the foul. That's pushing foul.
Okay. Yeah.
The fact that you use the term push, that's a foul. That's a foul every time.
Even if I'm showing my hands and right, and I'm moving along. And
well, see, again, we get that a lot too.
Yeah, no,
not always as both players are moving, so the defender is following the ball handler obliquely. That classic is the defender has established legal guarding position, and then they raise both hands in the air to make the layup typically, or the pull-up jumper more difficult. But instead of going straight up, they inevitably end up going forward as they leap. That is a foul. That's a foul.
No, I'm not even there yet making a basket. I'm I'm just talking like from that straight line, we're
Oh, okay.
going side by side, and I'm showing you my hands.
Hmm.
They're here.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm
But
just shuffling, right?
yeah, that's fine as long as you don't make any contact
That's what I thought you were going to say.
with the ball handler. Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
in that case, the offense, I mean, they have a lot of advantage, but they can make contact with me and get a
Uh,
foul,
they can make contact with you as long as they don't displace the defender, assuming the defender had legal guarding position. You
which
can have a
is
charge. You can have a charge with both players moving, and in this case, the defender moving. If the movement by the offensive player displaces the defender and creates an advantage for the offensive player, in that scenario, typically it's the ball handler throws the arm bar at the
oh, right.
defender.
Yeah.
Now, a
Hmm.
lot of times there's like little or no contact by that arm bar because the defender's already moving, right? He's keeping pace with the offensive player. So a lot of times the offensive player with that arm bar will either not make contact because they're just trying to create that space for themselves and the defender's
Right.
giving away because he or she doesn't want to get charged with a block, or there's minimal contact and it really amounted to nothing. It didn't displace the defender. What's more common is the mistake a lot of offensive players in that scenario, so the dribbler driving the basket makes, is when they lower their shoulder. When they put the arm bar, but then embellish it with lowering their shoulder and they make contact with the defender, and that contact ends up displacing the defender, even if it's just say like 6 inches. That's player control. We're going the other way.
Yeah. That
As
makes
you
sense.
gained an advantage, you literally
Mhm.
displaced the defender, even if you just displaced them half a foot away.
Yeah.
Because without you doing that, without you making that contact, that defender is still closer to you without touching you. So you, Mr. and Mrs. Ball Handler, you created an advantage for yourself and disadvantaged the defender. So that's player control. And again, and we see that so many times in a game, and it's like the coach will say, but the defender stuff that made contact. It's like, coach, it's like your offensive player initiated the contact not only with their forearm, but they lowered their shoulder.
Yeah.
And if they hadn't lowered their shoulder, probably borderline. But the fact that the offensive player embellished the contact by lowering their shoulder, creating additional contact, made contact, saw the defender get pushed back like maybe half a foot or a foot, that's player control foul.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I kind of had a thought out of that's exactly what it was. Because what's really important in that particular scenario is how we teach the kids how to guard that situation, right? And I always talk about hands to the heaven, follow the defender, or follow the offensive player to the hoop. I don't say don't make contact with them. It's almost natural, right? Because they think if that space is in between them, you can't,
The
they're not going to stop them.
the key component in any contact situation between an
Hmm.
offense and defensive player is advantage, disadvantage. And veteran officials, that's a refrain that's just ironclad. It's reinforced constantly.
Hmm.
Advantage, disadvantage. Did either player gain an advantage by initiating the contact? On the flip side, did they did the player that received the contact be put at a disadvantage because of the contact?
Okay. Yeah.
So advantage, disadvantage. I had a game at College Park about a month ago. Called the College Park offensive player driving to the basket, what we were just talking about a second ago. Did the arm bar and lowered their shoulder. Player control. We're going the other way. That's a foul. Coach from College Park didn't like the call. Was shouting, it's like, we teach that to our players all the time. And and then he emulated the arm bar movement. And I looked him, as we were in transition, and it's like, coach, it was more than that. He lowered his shoulder.
Yeah.
Created an advantage for himself by that additional contact. That's foul. That's player control foul. So you can't do that. So, I mean, I understand the principle of teaching the arm bar to offensive players heading to the basket to create that space to get the
Right.
defender to back off. But you have to keep in mind you cannot displace the player by any form of contact. If that causes the defensive player to back up and it's minimal contact, you're really not displacing them, then we let that go. We got nothing.
Yeah.
No advantage or disadvantage created by that, by the offensive player.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and I can see why that's taught, because sometimes that will get a defender to back off because they don't want to be called for a blocking call, especially.
Well, also at the younger levels, we teach that to protect the basketball,
Sure.
right? Armbar out, hold, right?
Yeah.
And so the kids take that all the way through, not just when they're dribbling or stationary dribbling, but when they're going to the basket too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as long as the defender's not displaced, and a lot of times that will work with the defender, it will get them to back off, and then you gain an advantage, but you didn't create any contact with the defender. You got that defender to back away from you just simply by extending the arm bar. Just extending your forearm towards the defensive player, I mean, that's not a foul, it's not a violation, unless you make contact, and the contact you made by doing that created an advantage, physical advantage.
That makes sense. All right, thank you. Thank you for all those details. That was great. Switching gears a little bit, loose ball fouls. So
We'll stop right there. There's no such thing as a loose ball foul at the high school level. It's not even in the rule book.
In the rule book. Okay, so dive into that.
I understand what you're describing. There are loose balls at the high school level. Loose ball, by definition, means that neither team has control of the basketball.
Correct.
That's the term, loose ball. But there is no loose ball. There is no term loose ball foul at the high school.
Yeah. But when you get called for a foul on a loose ball situation, right? For example, I have the ball, I roll, right, to protect or to rip. A lot of times that gets called, right? That's a travel.
As soon as you roll, basically, that's a traveling violation. As soon as you roll, you can dispose of the basketball, like try to pass it off while you're rolling. But if you roll first and continue to hold the ball, guess what? You lifted your pivot foot. Both feet are off the floor. That's the same difference as if you jumped in the air and changed your mind about passing or taking a jump shot and land on both feet. That's a classic analogy. That's a classic travel. And that's why, because a lot of people misunderstand that. If you dive for a loose ball, we see that all the time. And the motion of diving makes you slide like 20 feet across the court with that's not technically a traveling violation, because it's your momentum going after the ball that caused you to slide. Yeah. And then we're looking for, once you stop, what are you doing? Then if you start rolling over or try to get up without dribbling, then you have a travel. So there was a state championship game where that scenario occurred, and the officials called the player who dove after the ball for a traveling violation because it was really borderline. It's like, at what point did that player start rolling? Was it after the slide was it before the slide ended, or was it after the slide ended? And they adjudicated it was after the slide ended. When they looked at video, because it was a state championship game in Sacramento, it was like, it looks like they started that roll before they actually, had full possession of the ball. So, but I mean, trying to make that call, real time can be difficult. And then the other related scenario to that is, and this happens very frequently, no team control, the ball is loose on the floor, two players are going after it, and there's contact, there's a collision between the two players. They're typically both on the floor. It's like two football players going for a fumble, right? Right. Yeah. Well, this isn't football. This is basketball. Yeah. Typically, that results in a foul, and the foul is called against the player who displaced the other player to either get possession of the ball or attempt to get possession of the ball. You cannot. That's a pushing foul. You can't displace another player to gain an advantage. In this case, to get possession of the basketball. So, players will look up and it's like, and I hear this all the time after that, the whistle blows and we whack someone with that. It's like, they were just going after the ball. That's like, I know they were going after the ball, but your player displaced the other player in their attempt to get the basketball. There's usually about a split second difference between when one player arrives and the other. And even if they literally arrive simultaneously where the ball is, almost inevitably one player is pushing the other player out of the way, either by their momentum.
Yeah, they're trying to grab it. They're doing something, right? And that's where a lot of times, if you and I grab this ball and we're on the ground, to rip it away from you, I do this, right? Right? And that starts the roll.
Well, yeah. I mean, in that scenario, you typically don't have a foul because both are going after the ball.
Correct.
If you're not displacing the other player by grabbing that ball, if you're not on top of them, rolling on top of them, or if you're not pushing their torso, their body in any way, you're just tussling over the ball.
Correct.
Sometimes that'll be a held ball situation. If both have if there's four hands on the ball, no one has clear control. If the other one's a little bit stronger than the other one and just takes care of business and rips it out, then we're looking for what you were starting to allude to. Then we're looking for a traveling violation.
Right. Okay.
He ripped the ball loose. Now what are you doing? Once he has possession, if he decides to roll over, over his shoulder or something, well, sorry, you just traveled. If he rips it loose, stops, looks for a teammate, and passes it without making any motion, any rolling motion, then that's a legal play.
The other one that in that situation too that comes up, and you did allude to it, which was I get to the ball first, but I don't have control, right? And you're standing, let's say you're standing behind me at this point. Okay, so I'm on the ground and I'm going after the ball. I don't have it completely. You come from behind me. If you land on me, that's a foul.
That's a foul.
Yes? Okay. Yes. If you obviously leap over me, don't touch me, not a foul unless there's some other thing you're doing. But
I've never seen a player able to do that, at least at the high school level.
Yeah, they usually jump from behind or jump on them in that particular situation, or because I hear that a lot with at all levels. And I see that as a foul because you're jumping from behind me. My player had the ball, they're on the ground already, right? You can't do that, right? Okay. Yeah.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.